This week in 1% Weekly, we expose Mark Zuckerberg as a 19th century dictator. We talk about a very rare kind of pension with Paul Watson, and we've got news of the latest tactics by Big Brother HMRC. All is not well in Facebook land. As you know, there's been a huge scandal about the leakage of their data. They've had a record fine of £500,000, which is hardly going to disturb them too much, but they are definitely in the bad books. Have you seen any of their TV ads where they're trying to kind of wheedle their way back into our affections by saying, you know, we just want you to have fun, we want to look after you, we want to enjoy Facebook like it always used to be before we started selling your data to Cambridge Analytica, for example. Now, shareholders are starting to say that the real problem is with Mark Zuckerberg himself. Because very unusually for a big public company, he is both the chairman and the chief executive. And he has a huge tranche of shares with special voting rights that means effectively no one can outvote him on anything. He is a one-man dictator. And they've likened him to the 19th century robber barons in his attitude of saying, well, you know, it's my business, I'm in charge of it, I can do what I like. He's refused to appear before a parliamentary committee to talk about these data breaches, and the answers that Facebook staff have given to questions have been very evasive. So they are not cooperating with the authorities, they are a law unto themselves, and the shareholders are starting to get a bit worried about it because what's really happened recently is hugely damaging to their brand, and when the brand gets damaged, it isn't long before the share price gets damaged too. So these shareholders have vowed to start putting more and more pressure on Zuckerberg by going to the AGM, the shareholders meetings, writing to the directors expressing their dissatisfaction, and generally talking this up in the media as much as they can to say, we are not happy. Whether anything will change as a result of this, who knows? But if Zuckerberg is serious about rescuing the trust that Facebook users have put in that platform, I think he's got to do something, because these days there are two things that every business competes for. One is people's attention, breaking through all the noise, and the other is earning their trust. What people now realize, and I have to say, sorry, but I did tell you so, I've been saying for some time that people are far too cavalier with the data that they put into things like Facebook. They share far too much, and once it's there forever. Now people have started talking about, you know, the right to be forgotten and deleted and all the rest of it, belatedly, but the reality is there's an awful lot out there already, and that data is so precious and valuable that companies are desperate to get hold of it. That's why they pay a fortune to Facebook for advertising. And for those of us who have ever done any Facebook advertising, you'll know the cost has gone through the roof in the last couple of years. So Facebook is minting it from your data. But they're also very cavalier with who they share that data with. Now, with obviously things like GDPR coming into force, they're going to have to tighten this up. But I think it goes beyond that. It's not just the mechanics of how they look after data that need to change, it's the Facebook culture that needs to change. That's going to come from the top, that's going to come from Mark Zuckerberg. I think the best thing he could do is to bring in an independent CEO and just retain the role of chairman himself, and bring in a new face who can earn the trust that's been damaged by all of these revelations of recent months. So there's my advice to you, Mark. I'm sure you watch 1% Weekly. If you want to get in touch, just drop me an email and I'll explain my rationale in a bit more detail for you. Now, for our next interview with Paul Watson, I have to mention the dreaded P word, pensions. But don't go away and don't go to sleep, because this is a pension like you've never seen before. So please pay close attention as Paul tells us all about the director's pension. So Paul, we touched on last time on some of the vehicles that you use to make your investments. And one of the things I always dread is mentioning the P word, pensions, because it normally just switches people off and they all fall asleep. But you've gone through a particular route with your pension that's ended up in a pretty powerful place. So what's kind of the steps you've gone through to get to this stage?
Sure. Well, it started obviously when I was within my corporate career. I had my company pension. In fact, I had 2 or 3 company pensions as I sort of moved from company to company. Whilst we were expats, one of the financial advisors we were working with suggested that we should put it into a SIP structure, which would at least give us a degree more control. Up to that point, I was, like many people, very disconnected, frankly, and didn't really know or think about my pension that much. It just happened. We started doing some investments, and unfortunately it was some of those investments which is where we lost our funds. So it was only when we returned to the UK and I had set up my own business that was the vehicle, or that was the opportunity for me to then look at something which is called a director's pension. And the director's pension is really the vehicle that has allowed me to supercharge the returns that we're getting and give us opportunity to do things like a loan back.
Okay, well, I mean, these are, don't get me started on this. This is the best kept secret in investing. I checked recently on Companies House. I think there's something like 4.4 million limited companies in the United Kingdom. And in the whole of 2017, HMRC only approved 4,000 of these directors' pensions. So, literally, at best, 1 in 1,000 business owners seems to even know about these things. And I'm guessing that, you didn't find out about them from some regular financial advisor. You actually had to get some specialist advice that this was something you could benefit from.
Absolutely. It was somebody that I met who is both partly linked with Elite, but also with the property franchise that I was working with, I'm still a member of right now. And they are the people who have become effectively the third trustee. Obviously, managing a pension is an important role. There are many sets of rules and guidelines that you have to follow, and both my wife, Carol, and myself have actually gone through the pension regulator training. Exciting stuff, but we are now trustees of our own pension, and we have an external trustee as well, which is that gentleman. And so when we want to make an investment, pretty much Carol and I decide the strategy, and we rubber stamp it with the third trustee just to make sure that it is on the right side of the track in terms of legality with the pension regulator.
I think just to try and be clear for people, we talked in a previous discussion about the range of investments for high net worth people, the bonds, the loan notes, the burial plots, the care. Those things are simply not available in a SIP. About the only thing outside the stock market you can put in a SIP is commercial property.
Yeah.
But if you look at the range of investments you've made through your director's pension, it's massively broader, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's probably because in the days when I had my SIP, and I'm sure a number of other SIP providers or SIP trustees, they still tend to be large corporations, FCA regulated corporations, and therefore they tend to stay in that world of FCA regulated stuff, and they will still predominantly look at stock market type of investments, frankly. Whereas when you step into the world of having a director's pension, and particularly if you then are working as a trustee yourself and you work with director pension trustees, it opens up a new area of the unregulated but more sophisticated investments, but the higher return ones. Absolutely.
So I think it's all part of this thing about taking control, where instead of some distant trustee telling you what you can and can't do, you're now in a position to say, well, actually, here's our complete financial portfolio, and I guess you choose with Carol which ones will be in your director's pension, which might be in your own names for different reasons. So.
Exactly that, Graham. We discuss everything between Carol and I, and it is exactly that. Will some of the investments that we make will fit in the pension, and if they are yielding a good return that we want to tax shelter, it makes sense to leave it in the pension. For example, the burial plots which have the capital gain, we've done that outside of the pension because we have the capital gains allowance that each of us can benefit from. One of the other things that we've also done is we've aligned our pension to help us drive our property investment business, because one of the beauties of the director's pension is that you can borrow from it back into your business at the princely rate of 1% above base rate. So I'm lending my own business money at 1.5%, which is fantastic. So we're using that money to conduct the refurbishment on our latest property, and then when we remortgage that, the money will go back into the pension again, and we'll look at an investment.
I mean, this is just so powerful. That's why I call these things a financial Ferrari, because what you've got is not just a tax wrapper, it's not just an investment vehicle, it actually enables financial engineering between your pension plan and your business, and that is so unusual. And in fact, I don't know if you've done it or not, but you can also lend money to third parties, like bridging finance to a property developer, for example. And if you had some bumper year in the operational business, you could take profits from that and shelter them in the director's pension, so you're not paying corporation tax on them. It is just such a fantastic vehicle, and yet it is so little used that I guess you weren't that connected to your pension in the old days, but I'm sure now as you look back, you can see just how much more powerful this new director's pension is.
Very much so. I mean, I would barely look at a pension statement at all in my corporate life, whereas now I'm regularly looking, I have my spreadsheet, I'm regularly looking at when investments are due to pay out, when's the next one to go in, how much has the pension grown by. So I'm absolutely engaged with it. And because we make the investments, we see the bank account, money going in, money going out, so you're very closely connected with it. And the other beauty is as far as the intergenerational planning. So, the fact that it is a trust structure means that from our perspective, we're growing a pot, not really to live on in our retirement years, because our business will provide that income, but actually we're growing a pot to pass on in a tax-free way to the next generation.
No, absolutely. And again, people need to realize that with 40% inheritance tax above a certain level, anyone who's accumulated significant assets, particularly things like property, they could be passing on an enormous tax bill to their kids if they don't plan it carefully. So that's really a powerful point. So as you can see, Paul, I get quite excited about these directors' pensions. What would your advice be to anyone that's owning and running a business at the moment who perhaps hasn't got one of these in place?
I think you're right to get excited, because they are a fantastic vehicle, and one that I knew nothing about just a few short years ago. But for any business owner, if you have the opportunity and you want to create intergenerational family wealth, if you want to do investments in a tax-free structure, if you want to shelter profits that you would make in 1 year from your business and be able to lend money back to your business, it is such a flexible structure. Director's pension is a fantastic vehicle that is just, it's a well-kept secret.
Okay, lovely stuff. For now, Paul Watson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I hope that little chat with Paul was enough to show you just how powerful a financial engineering tool a director's pension can be. If you'd like to learn more about them, just have a look at the website in the description field below this video. You've heard me talk before about the amazing powers of HMRC and how I feel they've gone too far. Well, now in this world of GDPR in which we live, they're at it again. They've been asking people to say whenever they ring up, "My voice is my password." And they have collected the unique voice recordings of 5 million taxpayers in recent months. Now, there's an organisation whose name I love called Big Brother Watch, who are saying enough is enough. This is outrageous. We have not given permission for this. You have forced us, you have railroaded us into giving you our voice as a piece of recognition data. This is enforced ID, and we're not going to have it, and you should delete it. And I urge you to reinforce that campaign in any way you can. Write to your MP, write to HMRC saying, why should we give you our voice recognition as a unique identifier. It's like handing over our passport or giving you our fingerprints or giving you our ID to steal. It's outrageous that a government department thinks it can get away with this. They've already done it with 5 million people. Please do not participate in it yourself and find a way of raising your voice in objection, as once again the deep state thinks it can just ride roughshod over the law, over our privacy, and just make rules out of thin air that have never gone through Parliament, have never been agreed as law of the land. We must fight back against HMRC. So join Big Brother Watch now and tell these buggers where to go. Thanks for watching 1% Weekly. If you like what you see, why not subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell so you get notified every time we broadcast a new program. Or if you just want to watch another video, how about this one? Are you going to make a choice then? Because I can't sort of stay here all day. I'm getting a bit, my hands are getting tired. So, in your own time,